Hi Malika.
Hi Harley.
Hello everybody listening.
Hi guys.
Welcome back to Sonder and Salt, the weekly food podcast about the magic of eating.
Why are you giving me daggers?
Because I was ready to kick you if your jaw even quivered.
Can people hear this? How you treat me?
How you been?
Fine, thank you. How have you been?
I'm alright. I'm happy today.
Why?
Got new listeners.
From
Albania.
Merdita.
Merdita. Welcome to our new listeners in Albania, and welcome to all of our listeners that have been rocking with us for over a year. Just want to keep throwing that in there.
Yes.
If you enjoy this podcast as much as we enjoy making it for you, do not forget to rate and review and give us 5 stars. And write a little paragraph about all the reasons you love the podcast. On Spotify, you can hit where the star rating is and just leave 5 stars there.
5 stars.
Couple people
only.
have though. We've got
Yeah.
some new reviews and stuff over the last couple of weeks. So thank you. It really does help.
And some new listeners, like subscribers.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. Rating and reviewing the podcast does really, really help with the reach. So please remember to do that. Food highlight of the week. What have you got? Where you been?
So
Hill and Shock.
No, actually. Although, have I been back once since the last time I mentioned it on the episode?
Probably.
I think I did because they brought the chicken back. But anyway, that's not the food highlight of the week. You've heard me bang on about that enough. This week, me and my mother went to Moko in Tottenham. It's a hi-fi bar, so they play records. It's quite a chilled space, but there is a chef residency in there by our friend Saf.
Yeah.
Sister Woman at Vegan.
Yeah.
So I thought I would check it out because it's literally down the road from me.
I know,
and
it's so
it's been
close
on my
to you.
list. Sister Woman Vegan is quite self-explanatory. Saf is a vegan chef. And at her residency at Moko, her menu is centered around soul food. So it's vegan soul food. I believe her mother is African American, so she draws inspiration from there. And it's quite a short menu.
Yeah.
A couple of small plates.
Did you get the okra?
I did actually.
Oh, I looked at the menu and I was like, Malaka's not
I don't
gonna
like
order
okra,
it. Yeah.
but I actually liked it because it was like grilled.
Crispy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's grilled, so it hasn't got like a particular crisp, but it's got a crunch.
Yeah,
I guess you'd
yeah.
say, because it's not overcooked.
Cooked, yeah.
There are some Caribbean, like Jamaican inspirational dishes on there. There's like a sandwich called the Rude Boy, which is cocoa bread.
She's also Jamaican, yeah.
Yeah, cocoa bread with like a ackee remoulade. Anyway, the food was fantastic. My mum is a bit of a cynic when it comes to like vegan food because what she typically knows.
Oh, just your mum?
Yeah, what she typically knows is like bean stew,
Right,
stew peas, chickpeas, lentils,
Ital
ital stuff. Yeah, and I think she's just a little bit bored of it. So when I said, "Oh, it's vegan," she was like, "Oh, okay, let's check it out." She loved it. She could not believe it.
Saf's very innovative as well. I find that
Yes.
with her food. So I first ever had Saf's food years and years and years ago. She had a food stall next to my food stall at Black Girl Fest. I think it might have been the first year. And I think at some down point we kind of managed to swap foods. She gave me some cake. She gave me this mac and cheese, and I
the mac and cheese. Yeah,
the mac and cheese.
I've spoken about it before.
Yeah, her
on
mac
an
and
earlier
cheese. I don't
episode.
know how she does it. I think obviously we've spoken about this as well in allergens episode where you give up something, you end up with quite a lot of nuts.
Yeah.
So I think she's quite a lot of nuts in her things, but the mac and cheese, I'm
It's
like,
nice.
yeah,
like a
cashew cream
base.
kind of thing.
Yeah, really nice. But we ordered the Southern Prosperity, which is stewed black-eyed peas, tempeh bacon, kale chips, pickled okra, and toasted spelt cornbread. My mum loved this.
Oh, cornbread, I love
I think she
cornbread.
probably uses something like smoked paprika, but not too much that it tastes like smoked paprika. It just gives it a slightly smoky taste. Really, really good. And I liked the spelt cornbread because it wasn't dry, but it wasn't overly cakey.
Right.
It felt very much like a cornbread, which was nice. We also ordered the green and gold, which was cheesy grits, jerk grilled oyster mushrooms, green seasoning, hibiscus scotch bonnet chili oil. Really nice. My mum loved this. I don't think she's ever had grits in her life. The texture of the grits was a little softer than I like, a little finer than I like, but the flavour was really, really nice. Enjoyed that. The grilled okra, house-made fried chicken salt, lemon, spicy ackee mayo. Mwah. Really enjoyed that. And I'm not an okra person. After a while, I had to stop just because the slime was starting to build up, but it wasn't slimy, it wasn't overcooked. And then the sweet potato salad, roasted sweet potato, kale, feta, dried cranberries, vinegar dressing. Absolutely love that. But I think the star of the show for me was the cocoa bread and butter pudding. banging. It
really?
was so
I'm so
nice.
jealous.
So nice. Served with a vanilla ice cream and cherry bee syrup. It's quite low key because ultimately it's a bar.
Yeah.
So it's a place that people just come and chill, but you can order food, you can order drinks. There's a bar there where they do cocktails and stuff, but really, really nice. My mum can't wait to go back. We didn't get to try the mac and cheese because we just felt like we had ordered quite a bit already. But we're going to try that one next time, and also the Rude Boy sandwich, which just sounds fantastic.
Oh, that does sound fantastic. Oh, I'm so jealous. And I'm so happy for Saf as well. Obviously, she is our friend, but we don't just pick up anyone.
That's what I said to her.
The food is good.
Yeah, that's what I said to her. She messaged me and I was just like, listen, if it weren't here,
I would have told you.
We wouldn't be talking about it, right? It wouldn't be a highlight of the week. So definitely recommend.
Go ASAP.
If you want to experience vegan food that's not just like the usual, and it's I don't know how this sounds, but it felt very substantial.
Okay.
And it felt like full meals, not just like a bunch of vegetables kind of thrown together,
sides and stuff. And
I'm not really into like bacon replacements and those kinds of things. So in my mind, it is very much mushroom, but the flavor and the texture was really nice. So
definitely check it out. We'll have it linked below. We'll also have Saf's Instagram linked below. That is Sister Woman Vegan, and also Moko, because they have events and stuff going on as well.
Yeah,
so I think she's cooking 5 out of 7 days on the days where they have the kitchen open. But I've seen, I think the cookies, the internet cookies have just got me. But since I've been engaging with like her content of it, suddenly it's like, oh, we're playing this record this week. We're playing that.
They played Yusuf Days when I was there. So
I've seen some vibes. But okay.
What's your highlight?
My food highlight of the week is completely different to yours.
Okay.
I went to an Italian restaurant with my friends in Chiswick. It is called Villa di, I want to say Gigano. Giggiano, but I know
Was
with
it Gigano?
I know with Italian sounds, double of one letter can make it g or can make it je.
Oh.
So Gigano maybe or Gigano.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I'll obviously leave it linked below. We had a few things to share as starters. A typical Italian instruction in terms of like antipasti, primi, secondi, dolci. But we were not out there for a 5-course meal, so we just got a couple of starters between us. Burrata. Obviously, because I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
Okay.
I absolutely love it.
Sounds fantastic. Next.
The only thing I wouldn't say I loved about it was
next.
we got there. We were like the first cover, probably 6 o'clock, like first cover. So the burrata was still very cold. I think it needed to be out of the fridge. It wasn't very like, but the actual flavour of it was delicious.
The flavour?
It was so good.
Tastes
and it had
a bunch of nothing.
Okay, to those with an undeveloped palate, maybe.
Give me a break.
And it also had like a roasted, I don't know, sun-dried tomato kind of.
That's what you were tasting.
Thing going on, and it came with crispy kale chips that were very nice, a little bit salty. You weren't even there. Anyway, also got some olives. Nocellara.
Yeah. Were they pitted?
No, they weren't.
Okay, I love when they're not pitted.
So we had some the other day that were pitted, didn't
which was still quite good.
They were still
I don't
good.
think they had brined for too long.
Yeah.
Typically, I don't like them pitted.
And then I think Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you're probably listening. I think she posted on her story the other day, like a packet of pitted Nocellara olives from, I want to say M&S, because who else? And she was celebrating that they were pitted.
Really?
Yeah. So I think there's just a
not
split.
My thing.
There's a split whether you want them pitted or you don't want them pitted. And then I had a prawn linguine dish basically, which was absolutely delicious. And the thing
Fritte de mare?
No, it was literally just prawn tomato, very garlicky. But the thing that I really really liked that made it stand out was that it had like a pistachio crumb.
Okay.
I'll share a picture on Instagram. It might even be in my dump of September. But it had this pistachio crumb that was just absolutely hitting. And then dessert, I went out, it was a bit of a blur. It was a bit of a blur.
Why?
Because I ordered tiramisu, and then I got tiramisu, and then Jana and Sana both got baked cheesecake.
Yeah.
And then as we were all taking our pictures of them, little content creators, Jana was like, wait, I've got something to say. And that's when she asked me to be her maid of honor.
Oh.
So I was actually just like, we're all sitting at the table crying.
Really?
Yeah. And then I couldn't even eat the tiramisu.
Oh my gosh. Well, congratulations.
I put it in my mouth, and I was like, tastes like salty like my tears.
Really?
And then towards the end of it I was like, okay, this does really hit, but you ruined my flow.
Wow. just to cut you and ask you to be a maid of honor. Yeah.
You ruined my meal flow. But it was a really, really, really nice meal. Once I posted it on Instagram, someone else piped up and was like, oh, I love this restaurant. My friend Mirda. So I would say it's hitting.
Okay. Add it to my everlasting long list of places to go to.
So, grazie. But anyway, moving on. Other things to celebrate.
Yeah.
Happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month. In the UK, it is Black History Month.
It is indeed.
In the month of October in the UK.
It is indeed. The Americans, I believe, celebrate it in February.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people celebrate it in February with them just because they'll monopolize a lot of like the media space and stuff like that.
This is not the space to question.
Why?
It's Black History Month in the UK.
Oh yeah, it's Black History Month in the UK. Do you know what I have a theory though?
What?
My theory of why they're separate months.
Why?
Because they don't want us together.
Probably not, but I also mean it's not the space for somebody to question why we have Black History Month.
No,
That's not up for debate.
No, but I have questioned why we have separate months that are not that far apart. Like they're not even half a year apart.
Yeah.
But I think they just don't want us to win. They don't want us together.
Yeah.
Do you remember that mythical day where all black people were supposed to get superpowers?
Oh yeah, was that during the pandemic?
No, because before.
Just before.
Because before,
yeah,
like 2014, 2016. I don't even remember, but
yeah, wasn't it 2020? I can't remember, but I do remember that day.
Yeah, there was like a day when everyone was supposed to.
Somebody tweeted it.
Yeah,
something ridiculous.
See, that's the power.
Something was going into retrograde or something crazy like that.
I think it was one of those Mayan days. You know, like the Mayan end of times
like when
days.
the sun lines up with the moon.
And we were supposed to all get our superpowers. But just the effects of that. For people who are not on Twitter, there's Twitter and then there's Black Twitter.
Yeah.
But this had the effects of going across global. It was a global effect of,
phenomenon.
Of this running kind of joke, but just we were all supposed to get superpowers on one particular day. And some people have it in their bio now. I got my powers on that day. Yeah.
Oh, bye.
Really funny. But it is Black History Month here in the UK, and we are celebrating on this podcast. This is a Black Run enterprise.
Yeah.
We have a few episodes that I will link below if you've not jumped into any of our conversations around blackness and food before. We have an episode about Jamaican food. We have an episode about jerk specifically with Melissa Thompson.
Yeah.
We have a few. So we'll just list anything below if you are joining us for the first time getting into Black History Month. We'll list all the other content that we have that you can enjoy for the rest of the month in the show notes of this. But for today, we're having a very particular conversation, aren't we, Malaka?
Yes, today, well, this is an exploratory conversation. There are no definitive answers.
Yeah.
And it's more just an audio think piece, I guess, between myself and Harley. We went to food season at the British Library. It was the day hosted by Melissa Thompson, our good friend Melissa Thompson. And one of the questions that popped up during the conversation was like, what is Black British food?
Yeah.
And we were both like,
So on the panel were a few names that we've thrown around on this podcast before, some of our friends. So Akwasi of Tatale, Melissa was not on the panel, she was like facilitating the day. Jackson of Black Eats London was on the panel. Jimmy Famuero was hosting the panel.
I believe so, yeah.
And Lorraine Copes of Be Inclusive Hospitality was also on the panel. The audience was then also made up of people that we know within the food industry. We were there, obviously. Some of our listeners were there. I think that was the days in the start of the summer we met a few people as well. So it was a very specific conversation with a very intimate audience who wanted to contribute, and there was a really good Q&A at the end, which is where I think our brains started to really go with the conversation. And the conversations throughout the day were all about Black food. We're discussing what Black British cuisine looks like and what it's going to look like, what we think is missing, why it doesn't necessarily have the accolades we've spoken about these things before, why it hasn't grown as big as some other nationalities' cuisines have managed to come to the UK and grow. But there was a lady in the audience who was African American who pointed out that what African American food looks like for Black people in America has a very long standing history. It's not something that just popped up, and maybe we just need to give ourselves some more time.
Yeah, I think the point she was making was that we're drawing comparisons almost, that it's not really fair because you can't compare the history of Black people in the UK versus the history of Black people in America, and hence what they have been able to develop as a culture. So
today's conversation, the title of today's conversation, or hypothetical, or what do they call it? Like the unconcludable. It's like a PhD topic,
basically.
Yeah. Is going to be, what is Black British cuisine to us?
Yeah.
Big asterisks.
Yeah, to us.
To us. So I think we're going to start with just some kind of very simple definitions. I think it's important for us to kind of outline a few words or our understanding of a few words, because we're just going to start throwing them out randomly throughout. Exactly. So the first one that we will define is going to be black.
Yeah.
We'll just take a very simple and broad definition to say anybody deriving from the continent of Africa, like anyone who has now ended up landing, maybe more familiarly knowing themselves as Caribbean or African American, but black, capital B, deriving from the continent of Africa.
Yeah, so that includes the diaspora.
Yeah, it does.
Which is a word that a lot of people like to use.
Which we're also going to use, which is a grouping of similar people across the world, wherever they kind of have been, whether they've landed, really.
Yeah, because you could say displaced, but I think at this stage, displaced might not be the most appropriate word to use anymore. Yeah.
Another word I think is important for us to define is culture, which will come up a lot as well when we talk about across the diaspora.
Yeah, particularly because for us, and through definition, by way of definition, food is part of what makes up a culture. Yeah. So in order for us to explore what we think Black British food is, we can't remove it from what we think the actual overall culture is. Yeah. So, got a couple resources. What is culture? This is an article on Live Science, and there's culture through sociology has got very clear definitions, but this was a nice succinct article that we found, and it says culture encompasses religion, food, what we wear, how we wear it, our language, marriage, music, and it's different all over the world. It is the characteristics and knowledge of a particular group of people, encompassing religion, cuisine, social habits, language, music, and arts.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that about the language aspect of it. There was a little discourse on X this week, talking about a particular actress. But the thing that really stood out for me from the thread was this lady basically pointing out that they were talking about Latina actresses and the ones who get to basically make it and call themselves Latina, but when they end up in film festivals surrounded by other people and then get spoken to in Spanish, they can't speak back. Yeah. So kind of why do they get to be the shining stars of the Latina community but don't understand the language? And this lady has tweeted, I'll link the tweet below, Tralia is the display name. The language is the cornerstone of your national culture. So if you don't speak the language of your people, you're not as an authentic member of that culture as you would be if you knew it. And I just think we'll just drop that for a second, because I think that's an important part of culture. And across the diaspora, people understanding the language is even a way and a method for people to pass down recipes and for people to learn and document things. So we'll come back to that in terms of like how our recipes and stuff have come with us or how they haven't. But language is definitely an important part of culture that can't be ignored.
When it comes to language, I see a lot of people talking about the fact that they don't necessarily know their mother tongue or their parents never took the time out to teach them the language. They didn't speak the language at home, so they don't know it. That doesn't mean that you are any less, particularly in my eyes, but I think they get to a point where you have to acknowledge the importance of language and the preservation of that. And so seeking to learn what you can, I would advise it, basically, to fully immerse yourself in your culture as best as you can, if that is important to you. So,
yeah, absolutely. Us speaking as Jamaicans who have the language of English as we're born in England and raised in England, but also patois, but then also there is dialects across the country of Jamaica.
Because some places,
that's like
I can't catch it.
Different dialects, and that's not accents. That's actual dialects, like how people will enunciate words and stuff like that. So if it is important to you, I think this also links to our conversation, which I know you didn't really want to bring up, but I'm gonna have to bring it up.
What's that?
Our conversation, which was can white men jerk? A few episodes ago, and this links into that because there are people out there who are so removed from the culture but are setting the precedent for what that's supposed to be. So it's like, if it's important to you to know all of these things or not, it doesn't take away from who you are and how close to your culture you are and what you can identify as. But that's fine if you're not the person that's going out screaming that you know it all. But if you are someone who's going to go out and scream it that you know it all and decide to open a restaurant based on certain people's cultures, then yes, you should be immersing yourself in as many aspects of culture that you've defined as possible. And that's not always the case. It's just a word that we might not have the answers to right now. Is what it actually means to be British. Like by
Black British or British?
To be both, because To be British, I guess the definition is to be a British citizen, which is a process. Like, you either have it or you don't, or you're born here and you just get given it. I never applied for it. I just got given it. So I can't really remove it from myself. I am. Like, I exist, therefore I am, kind of thing. But then to be Black British is another identity in itself that seems to be... You seem to be able to pick and choose whether or not you want it or not.
I've seen a lot more conversation lately about what it means to be Black British, and I think an embracing and acknowledgement of the fact that a lot of people within our generation, whether we like it or not, we are Black British. So there was a clip I saw, I think it was on BBC Sounds, with Nadia Hussein.
Yes, from Great British Bake Off.
Yeah, from Great British Bake Off, and she is Asian.
I think she's from Bangladesh.
A Bangladeshi Muslim. Yeah, I believe. And
a hijabi, so and a hijabi. Very like apparent in your face that what her character is basically.
Yeah. And she was talking about when she first started to get a lot of exposure, and she was like, "What am I going to identify as? Am I going to identify as a Bangladeshi hijabi Muslim woman, or am I going to identify as a British woman? Like, who am I?" So from her experience, she was saying she's not Bangladeshi enough in Bangladesh, but in the UK, as a clearly Asian woman with a hijab on, she's not British enough. So she exists in almost this alternate universe that doesn't really exist anywhere. It kind of sits between both cultures. And I think as a Black, on paper, somebody that is Black British, that has grown up my entire life in the UK, I have spent most of my years operating in London, in the UK. Myself, I don't necessarily identify as British. I acknowledge that I'm a British citizen.
Because I am.
But culturally, that is not what I identify as. However, when I go back to Jamaica, there are things about me, there are ways of life that I'm used to, there are just certain expectations that I have that clearly show I was raised in Jamaica. Exactly. And so a lot of people around this age group, and I think what are they? Gen Z? No, we're Gen Z. What's the next generation?
81. I'm looking at one resource. I know this kind of changes, but 1981 to 1996 are millennials. So we are both millennials, and then after us is Gen Z, which is 1997 to 2012.
So my brother basically would be on the cusp
of millennial and Gen Z.
His age and kind of below, where you become further and further removed with every generation that has settled within the UK. You start to define yourself in slightly different ways. So when we socialise, a lot of the people that we'll interact with, if I meet a guy tomorrow, it's like, "Oh, where are you from?" My response is always going to be, "I'm Jamaican." And then it's like, "Oh, no, what area?" "I'm from X." But it would never
Trelawney.
be... Yeah, and even... it's never going to be... Even when I'm abroad, it would always be... That would be my first initial response. Right. But then maybe if I'm abroad, it would be like, "Oh, I'm from London." I just wouldn't identify as British.
Okay. Wild card here.
Yeah.
Is there any circumstance in which you would identify as English?
When I'm joking. That, like, if I'm being completely honest. And when I'm joking, and if I go to Jamaica and I'm like, "I'm English, so I don't know what you are." Do you know what I mean? But it's very much said in jest, but it's also an acknowledgement of, I can completely see how we are not on the same page on this one. But I think bringing it back to food, because food is so embedded in the culture, for me, that has always been a link between myself and my culture. And my parents made every effort to ensure that culture wasn't lost in the household through multiple different ways, but particularly through the food. So I've grown up with a very Jamaican lifestyle when it comes to the way that I eat. On Saturdays, Saturday soup. On Sundays, even like on Fridays. Just generally, my whole food landscape is very much rooted in Jamaican culture, which I think has an impact on how I identify myself.
So I think I identify as Black British generally, and like I don't have a problem with it. But I think my perspective is slightly different to yours, because I do feel Black British, and I do feel British, and that's because, and this is a little ism and schism that really annoys me, when we fill out a form and it says nationality, but the drop down for some reason says United Kingdom. I'm like, it's not this question and answer, these are the wrong options. But that's because I have family from Britain outside of England.
Okay.
Like, my grandparent is Scottish. Like,
yeah.
my mum's family are Scottish. They are actually Scottish. They're not English.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a problem identifying as like, where's your family from? Like, where are you from?
Okay.
I am Black British.
Yeah.
And looking at this actual generation list that I've just looked at, you're completely right when you say that you lose things through generations. But in my family as well, I didn't even know this because I've never looked at it before, but my granddad, but I think both my granddads were from the generation age is called silent.
What is that?
Born between 1928 and 1945. Actually, my granddad was born before that. Like, my granddad was born in 1924, but then my dad is 2 generations younger than that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, that's over 100 years of being in this country. Whereas I think some people, or some families, yours for example, are a lot more recent.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been here for time.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? The way I see it, my family have been here for a while as Jamaicans in England, but then also as like, my family are Scottish, that's British. So yeah, I don't have a problem identifying as Black British, but I definitely would say that I have a difference to you in upbringing when it comes to food. Yes, that was a very important messaging in our household, and Saturday soup rituals, Sunday dinner rituals, even just eating as a family, celebrating certain occasions. Yeah, but I definitely think I had a stronger connection growing up to English food, like to what.
Yeah, toad in the hole. Or whatever.
Oh,
Toad
yeah.
in the hole or whatever.
Oh, yeah, toad in the hole.
Those things were sausages. Like, I think I said this before. My sausage was egg race tin chicken sausage.
Which is why I think I have no problem saying that I'm Black British.
Yeah.
Because I feel it.
Okay.
Do you get what I mean? I feel it.
Yeah.
But I think the issue is, well, not even the issue. I think the difference then is that I feel it on the British side. And then on the Black side, it's like, oh yeah, I'm Jamaican.
Yeah.
It's got very specific very quickly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, British to me is still just like,
yeah.
Like, I'm Black British.
Yeah.
Or I'm Jamaican.
Yeah.
But I'm Black British. I don't know. Anyway, I think we're going on too long about this.
Yeah, I feel like it's a complicated conversation.
It is.
I think it takes time to, especially as you grow older and you start to experience new things. And I think for our generation, just to get out of this section of the conversation, we've experienced so much as like millennials.
Yeah.
And like the growth of the internet and how connected that's made us feel across the world. We don't operate in silo, but we have gone from operating very much within our world to operating on a global level, whereas those that have come after us have grown up in a global world.
Yeah.
And so how that impacts their identity is very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to draw it back to the comparison with the food and the US, being African American is not comparative to being Black British yet, I don't think. But you'll find more Black people in America that just are African American.
Yeah.
Than you'll find here people that their first answer is Black British. Most people here are Nigerian, they're Ghanaian, they're Jamaican, they're Gambian,
I
they're
think
whatever.
that's going to take a while.
That's going to take a while.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a comparative thing to say you're African American versus they're Black British. But those are our little definitions. Little, taking up half an hour, but keep rolling.
Oh, gosh.
So now we've kind of established what being Black British means to us. Is there a Black British culture? Because there's no Black British language as such, or is there? And also, where does this Black British culture exist? Because surely it can only exist where people are happy to identify as being Black British, or where Black people exist as a whole.
So I think there is an overarching Black British culture, but the concentration of Black people in the UK is very much within the inner city areas, or places like London, Birmingham, the metropolitan. So you can't remove Black British culture from city culture. They're very much intertwined. I think the reality is you will have one and two on the outskirts, but ultimately they're the minority, like very much the minority at that point.
Industrialization linked to cities, therefore, is the blackness of cities, and this is a conversation that we need a sociologist for, linked to working class?
I think that then goes into a conversation about Windrush and the reason why there is such a higher concentration
in the cities
of Black people within the UK anyway. because people were coming to work.
Yeah.
So most of the work was concentrated in these areas. That is where these people would go to cities, even places like Leeds, etc. You had industrialization in those cities, so that's where they would go. Where they went initially is where they kind of laid their roots.
Yeah.
And so that's where the communities were built up.
Yeah.
That is my understanding of it. Exactly. So when we look on the census, in terms of the dispersion of Black people across the UK. So according to the 2021 census, London was the most ethnically diverse region in England and Wales. Out of all of the regions, London had the smallest percentage of people who identified as white British, and the North East and Wales had the largest percentage. More white people lived in the South East than anywhere else, and more people from Black, Asian, mixed and other ethnic groups lived in London than anywhere else. Newham in London was the most ethnically diverse of all local authorities in England and Wales. Yeah, the most ethnically diverse region was London. 46.2% identified with Asian, Black, mixed or other. London, 13.5%, and the West Midlands, 4.5%, had the highest percentage of people who identified as Black. The North East and Wales had the lowest. And then London and the West Midlands had the highest percentage of people with mixed ethnicity. The North East and Wales had the lowest. So most of us reside in London.
Yeah.
But you will see a presence in places like the Midlands. Because my family are from Wolverhampton. Yeah. And it was very Jamaican. Wolverhampton was very Jamaican.
My friend said that about Birmingham. He's always said that the Jamaican food is better in Birmingham because of the concentration of Jamaicans.
Yeah. Literally.
Like, that's literally how it is.
So in terms of what makes up Black on the census, it is Black, Black African, Black Caribbean, and Black other.
Which makes sense to me in my head in terms of how culture then manifests itself in real life. In terms of there are Black African restaurants, there are Black Caribbean restaurants, and in terms of the UK, there's not really much else. Yeah. I think a big conversation that's happened about Afro-Latinas, we don't really have many... There's not really much representation in Black British culture of anything other than being Caribbean or African. And obviously we've defined it as being descending from Africa, acknowledge that. But we don't really have Black Brazilian, Afro-Brazilian restaurants or cuisines or specialties or things like that in this country. So that doesn't really play a part into Black British culture.
So I think the reason for that is, although there have been Black people in the UK for very many years, hundreds of years, ultimately the presence of Black people in the UK is predicated at this time very much on the Windrush generation, and then you had West African communities that came over afterwards for career opportunities. And when you speak of the Windrush generation, and educational opportunities, and when you speak of the Windrush generation, that was built up largely off of the Jamaican community. And then you had smaller islands as well, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Lucia, Barbados. And so that's the makeup of Black people in the UK, West Africa and the Caribbean. Yeah. Very much Nigeria and Jamaica.
Yeah, the culture has definitely emerged out of the people that are here. Yeah. Do you think that the Black British culture exists in food as well as it does in other areas? So from your definition of culture, I think it's very clear that there's a Black British music scene. Yeah. I think it's very clear that there's a Black British art scene. I think there's so many things I see popping up about Black British, like spoken word and just areas of the arts as a whole. We touched briefly on whether or not there's a Black British language. Yeah. But do you think that has Black Britishness seeped into food fully?
I think as long as you have Black people in Britain that are technically Black British, then there is going to be a Black British food scene. In terms of what it's made up of, I think it's very much made up of people wanting what they would have eaten at home. Right. And so where we're like a couple of generations deep, the Black British food scene is very much what we remember or are able to recreate from the foods of our homeland, basically. So when you look across the Black British kind of food landscape, it's very much Jamaican restaurants, Caribbean restaurants, African restaurants, but what they're serving is the food that you would get back in these countries. Right. We're moving into a space now where there is quote unquote innovation, but ultimately that's what it has been for all of these years.
I agree with you in the sense of that the Black British chefs that we see, the ones who are on TV, like are very, very mainstream. Not necessarily just the ones that we know, because we know some that are that don't necessarily go into what I'm about to say. But what exactly is it that they're cooking? Like, what is Ainsley Harriott bringing to the table from an innovative point versus what is he just bringing to the table because he knows it works, because it's what his parents cooked, it's how his parents cooked or whatever. There is an article that we have on here. We'll link it below. We'll link loads of sources below that we haven't necessarily spoken through, but that we have referenced in our thinking and how we've got to this position about Black-owned restaurants in the UK. I think it was by Vogue. And there are some on that list that really do have the innovation that you're kind of touching on of how we would develop a Black British cuisine that is not just rice and peas and curry goat, and that there's, you know, levels to this. However, I think there's like 14 on that list, and they're rare. You know, if you ask someone to write a list of top tequila bars in the UK, there'd be at least 30. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? If you ask someone to write, favorite Italian restaurants, it'd probably be 50. So the fact that there's only like 14 on that list means they're probably the onlys.
What was the list, sorry?
So 13 of the best Black-owned restaurants in London. But I find that the fact that they've decided to go with 13 is kind of like the onlys. Like they've kind of... You
think it's indicative of the limitations?
Of the limitations, because we've been to some of these restaurants. Some of these restaurants are absolutely amazing. And they are definitely restaurants, and they are Black-owned restaurants. But I think the food that's more common in this country is more of the fast food opportunities, the yard food shops, as we would call them, the more casual like eating establishments where it's very much what we'll say like mums and aunties are cooking kind of thing. And when we went to Carnival this year, Notting Hill Carnival, we were actually really looking forward to trying something else other than what we have, because, and you made this point, we should have probably had, and I say we, Jamaicans are not really supposed to have the overall monopoly on Notting Hill Carnival. No. Like culturally, playing mass, like jab, like all like everything about it is not Jamaican. Like it's not a Jamaican thing. We're included because it's a celebration of the Caribbean, but we're not supposed to be the leaders in that space. And I think with the music, which is a whole nother conversation, it's very varied, and I think it's always stayed that way. And Black Britishness is definitely coming into that space in a way that an expert on Carnival would have to come and talk about. But the food specifically, we were really disappointed. Like, we went there with the expectation to really celebrate culture. If anyone's seen the reel that we made there, we went there with the intention to like, let's try some stuff, like let's get some stuff. We are always going on about being Jamaican, let's experience something else for once. Like, this is the place where everyone's going to come out and give their very, very best. And it's just Jamaicans everywhere.
The thing is with Carnival, I know that is what it's going to be when you go to Carnival, but I think the scale at which Notting Hill operates, because Notting Hill Carnival has been around for years, and it was started by a Trinidadian woman. The other islands in the Caribbean outside of Jamaica, like St. Lucia, Trinidad, Barbados, they have a presence in the UK, but ultimately it is smaller because they just didn't come over in the numbers that Jamaican people came over in. Yeah. So this is highly speculative, but ultimately, when you look at the amount of people that are in the catering industry that are able to provide food services, predominantly when it comes to, especially because we're lumped, and I think that's part of the problem. When you're lumped as Caribbean, as long as you're in the Caribbean, then your food is Caribbean. It doesn't allow for much differentiation. So when looking for Caribbean caterers, you're going to get an oversubscription of Jamaican Caribbean caterers. And there are 1 and 2 other food stalls at Carnival, but they're hard to find and they're far and few between. And I think it's just unfortunate that there isn't the numbers across those other islands for them to have the presence, but I think it's a case of championing them in whatever way is possible, because you're always going to get a higher number of Jamaican caterers. That's just what it is. And I think because we're in higher numbers, it's what people see when we've kind of taken up the forefront of Caribbean culture in the UK, but Jamaican culture is quite different from like St. Lucian culture because of how it was colonized, etc.
I agree with you, but in terms of like how this weaves into Black British culture and
yeah,
the representation or the development of it, there's only 13. Well, no, I'm saying there's only 13.
Yeah.
Vogue have decided there's only 13 of the best Black-owned restaurants in London because they are judging it the way that I want to judge it, on innovation, on something new, on something whatever. But when I go to Carnival, there's like 75,000 jerk chicken, curry goat, rice and peas vendors.
But it's Carnival the plate, like.
But this is the thing.
Yeah.
Carnival is the place because like London Notting Hill Carnival is like what the biggest street party in Europe. Like if there's any time for Black British culture to be like, what is it? Like I've come off the street, I've come off a plane, I've come to this thing.
I don't know if Carnival is the place though, because people are looking for a very specific Caribbean experience, and if you're looking for a very authentic Carnival experience, that doesn't really have anything to do with Britain. It looks like mass. The outfits, everything, that's very much what happens in the islands. So I don't think Carnival is that place. I agree
with you to an extent. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate in some parts of this because we've spoken about culture. And if culture is defined by language, this, that and the other, and in a place like Carnival, if Black Britishness has weaved its way into the music and it's a Black British experience with the music, if it's weaved its way into what everybody's wearing there, like then why is it not weaving its way fully into and in a developmental way into the food that we're eating or like the food that we're bringing to the day? Do you know what I mean? It feels like Notting Hill Carnival has become this Black British experience, except when you eat.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a different conversation because Notting Hill Carnival has almost been taken over and blown up because it drives revenue into the economy. But ultimately, for the people that partake in it in a particular way, it is a celebration of their culture, and it is very much about Carnival culture, which is quite specific. So for me, I don't think a Carnival is a place that needs to highlight innovation, etc. I think it needs to err on the side of authenticity.
Okay.
And innovation doesn't necessarily equate to authenticity. When it comes to restaurants and the other areas within London that you can engage with food on a day-to-day basis, the restaurants that people are opening, I think that is the perfect place and opportunity to, if you are as this Black British person, however you identify, it depends on how you identify as well, want to open up this place, then this is the space to bring something different to the community or to the food scene through these restaurants. But I just don't think it's Carnival. I would like to see more range within the Caribbean food that's available at Carnival, but I don't necessarily go to Carnival for something super innovative. I want to get some nice doubles, roti, this and that, alongside the jerk chicken.
Okay. So throwing out a question, is Black Eats London the market that they run? Bohemian Market. There's actually one coming up this week. The last one of the year, I believe. So if you are listening
is
to
it this week?
Oh, yeah, the week's episode comes out. It will be running the 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th of October. As usual, that'll be linked below and shared on our socials. So Black Eats London, by name, almost defines itself. Black food of London, or the Black restaurants of London, Black restaurateurs of London. But when you get there, what do you feel like you're experiencing with both bin? I feel like I'm experiencing the food from home. I don't feel like I'm experiencing London. I don't think I'm not experiencing Black Eats London.
But then what? So then, for me, the question to you is your expectation, or is it reflective of the actual landscape? Because I don't think,
I think
as
it's
a community,
a bit of both.
that we're really in that. I think there is a desire for people to do something slightly different, but I think that sits within some people, but not all people. But I don't think, in terms of a food scene within London, within the Black community, that it already exists. So Black Eats London, what comes to Black Eats London is reflective of what people are actually willing to cook. The people that are willing to cook, what they are willing to cook. And the people that are willing to cook are still in that space where they want to cook their food well. And there might be a little spin here or there, do you know what I mean? A little tweak here or there, but ultimately people want to cook. I'm Nigerian, I'm going to cook my food well. And I might do a bit of fusion, I might not.
Yeah.
I'm Ethiopian, I want to cook my food well. I'm X1, I want to cook it well. And I think that's just the space that we're still in. So
I agree with that's how it is. I just don't necessarily agree that that's therefore what defines the Black British food, Black British food cuisine.
Why? If just not what it is.
Because I think it just links back to what the lady said at food season, which is we shouldn't be trying to define it just yet. This isn't it.
Okay.
This isn't it. It's going to be a thing. We're going to find out what it is. But this here is not it.
But why is it not it? If this is what it is right now, then this is what from my perspective, it is what it is. But it's going to grow and it's going to evolve over time. So in terms of it being...
Because there's no cohesion.
Why does it need to be cohesion?
I just think when I'm lining up the lanes of culture, what I see of Black British music and the way that we can understand what that is.
Yeah.
When we look at Black British art, we can understand what that is in terms of what the artist, who the artist probably is that's produced whatever this thing is. Obviously, the art could be completely different piece to piece. Black British fashion, we can see what that is.
Yeah.
Bamboo earrings, hair shop lip gloss.
Yeah.
Like, we can see what that is. But so what you're telling me is Black British food cuisine is just Black people cooking food.
No, I think Black British food cuisine...
I'm not saying that's what you said, but I'm just...
No. I think Black British food cuisine is the people or the minorities within the culture cooking their food. I think it's very nuanced. I don't think it's anything more than a display of these fractions of people still cooking their foods from home. I think trying to lump it into... I think if you put it on one plate, it would be a buffet. That is how I envision it. And it would be a little bit of everything if you were to say, what is Black British food? But I think because of how we exist in the UK, we are multiple small groups of people. Whether one is more dominant than the other, it is multiple. You have Jamaican people, Nigerian people, Ghanaian people, Sierra Leonean people, Congolese people, you've got Ethiopian people, Somali people. So this all makes up Black Britain.
Would like one solid definition of like black, like imagine the Black British cookbook.
Yeah.
Is the only way for us to get there to be some form of erasure?
No. I think...
Has someone got to lose? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Has someone got to lose?
No,
because
I don't think so.
When I look at African American, or just like soul food, for example, you know what you're going to get. But someone at some point was like, it's not that, it's not that, it's not this, it's not that, it's these couple things. We'll take a bit of this, a bit of that. So it's like, but is London or is the Black British culture here too big a melting pot for everybody to
I
win?
don't think it's a case of it being too big a melting pot for everybody to win. I think for where we're at, and this is again why it's a bit dangerous to liken it to African American culture, because African American is very specific and there's a large group of people that fit under that one category. Whereas if you were to look at the term Black British, you can't quite look at it as a whole because we're just not that deep enough in this country that we're still identifying as Jamaican, whatever it is that our parents are. So the food is reflective of that. I think if you were to create a Black British cookbook right now, it would be thick. It would be a very, very big book in order to properly display all of the people that identify, and also even the ones that identify in a way that is impactful. Although you have a larger representation from places like Jamaica and Nigeria, you still have representation from other places. So that chapter might be bigger than others, but I don't think it could only be 2 chapters in the book. I think it's a conversation that we're having now that needs to be had continually over years. And as I get to 60 and my brother gets older and then our children start to get older, how they identify is just going to be different. That's just the reality of the situation. And so the food that they eat, what they cook, the restaurants that open, is going to grow and be different. Yeah. And one of the points that we had talked about when we were like discussing this episode was the emergence of things like Sunday roast dinners, which is really reflective of people now trying to merge their Blackness. Cultural experiences, with this living in Britain, what that means. Yeah. Having a Sunday roast is a very British thing. Yeah. But being exposed to it and then making it your own means that a Sunday roast for us includes rice and peas.
I was just about to say, yeah.
It includes rice and peas. That's just what it is. And then that became quite popular over the last year because this is something that people identify with, and it's like, oh, I'd love to be able to have that when I go out. But this is something we've been doing for years.
I agree with you. And we've had a little bit of that conversation already on our Christmas episode, which I will link below. And I had a conversation at work, which was people in the office, white people in the office, being very surprised that we had rice on Christmas Day. I was like, well, it's just it's like a glorified Sunday roast, isn't it? So and they were like, so what, you have rice on Sunday roast? I was like, yeah.
Yes. Rice with peas in it.
Well, kidney beans. So there's a conversation that we've already had about that. And we have so much more to say on this, but just conscious of episode length.
Yeah.
So we're going to part 2 this, and we're going to pick up the conversation. Malaka's had a book on her lap.
I know, but you haven't even touched on it.
We haven't even got that far yet. So I think we might have... underestimated how much we would have to say about this. So hopefully you've learned something new on this episode. We will have a couple of polls on Spotify, and to be honest, throughout the month of October we're going to be super active on socials, sharing loads of different resources, loads of different events and stuff that are going on throughout the month. So if you're interested and want to learn more about Black culture, Black British culture, Black British food culture, as we said, the Black Eat Sonder market is on this week. If you are listening the week this comes out, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th of October. There is also the Black Farmers Market, which is going on in Brixton. I believe it's the 8th of October. So there are loads of opportunities to learn something this month, us included.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll stick a pin in this. I think what we'll probably put up on Instagram as well, between this and when we record part 2, is what more do you want to know? Like what do you want to hear us kind of go in about, and then we can kind of flesh out from where we've laid a bit of foundation down today about Black British food culture. And maybe we'll call out some of our friends.
Yeah, I think that would be a good conversation.
Who are contributing to the Black British food culture and landscape. Dial up Saf.
Yeah.
See what being a vegan chef in residence, how that feels, and what effects that's having on her opinion of Black British food culture in a Black-owned establishment, actually.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month.
See you next time.
Bye, guys.